All right, let's go ahead and work on this word problem. So this one's kind of a big chunk, but we'll try to do our best here. So this one says a circular fountain has a diameter of 8 meters. An ant is crawling around the edge of the fountain at a rate of 0.5 meters per minute. How long does it take the ant to crawl once around the fountain? So we have a whole bunch of answer solutions. And obviously we have a little word problem. It's like an ant on a fountain, some weird math, something that somebody came up with. You know, it's like, what the heck are you guys thinking? And then we have some water going down. It's nice and cool. And then there's a little ant, right? And the ant has tons of legs and I don't know, whiskers or something weird. So the important thing is we need to look at, all right, so a lot of times when I tell students when they're dissecting a word problem, I'm like, create it down into 3 different parts. First, you have kind of like the visual, the broad like understanding of like where things are. But then we need to extract like the math pictures, if there is math pictures. Not always there are. But in this case, there is. Because they say we have a circular fountain, right? So the base of this fountain is circular. So guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to draw a circle. Now, whenever we're given a mathematical picture, we want to be able to look for the parts. Like, do we have a length? Do we have a width? Do we have a center, a radius, a diameter, circumference, whatever? And we look at the first example, or the first sentence, it says a circular fountain has a diameter of 8 meters. So we know we have to create that circle. And then the diameter, remember, is going to be the distance across the circle through the center. So this length here is going to be 8. Now, the important thing though is if we look at this ant, the ant, it says, is crawling around the edge of the fountain. Well, around the edge of the fountain is going to be all the way around there. Diameter would be like the ant is crawling straight across the fountain. So what we need to do is we need to be able to identify what is the distance around the fountain. That is going to be the circumference. Now, thankfully, we have a formula for the circumference. The circumference equals the diameter times pi. Well, we have the diameter. So guess what? Circumference equals 8 pi. We're good to go. All right, let's move on. An ant is crawling around the edge of the fountain at a rate of 0.5 meters per minute. Now, I remember when I was actually a struggling math student in school, and I remember my mom was helping me with a math problem, and I could not figure it out. And, you know, because the problem, or whatever math we were doing, was not talking about distance, rate, and time. But immediately, she read the problem, and she's like, oh, you need this formula. And I'm like, how did you know we needed this problem? What we're working on has nothing to do with that. She's like, yes, this is a universal problem. You should always know this problem and always look to expect to use that problem when anytime you're dealing with distance, rate, and time. Now, not every word problem that talks about rate or distance and time is going to utilize that formula, but she called this what we call like a trigger word. Whenever you see that information, a lot of times write that formula down because that tells you very important relationships that more times than not, you will be able to use to help solve either one of these missing variables. Now, we know the rate, which is 0.5 meters per minute, so I'm going to include that in there. And now let's see if we know what our distance or our time is. Well, the distance they're talking about is how long does it take the ant to crawl once around the fountain. So we're trying to find this distance of them traveling all the way around the fountain. Well, the distance all the way around the fountain is going to be our circumference, which we do have a relationship, which we do have a distance for, which is 8 pi. And so therefore, I'm assuming, are we trying to solve for t or are we given t? How long, that's trying to find the time, does it take the ant to crawl once around the fountain? So that is going to be our t, right? So now all we need to do to solve for t is just divide by 0.5. Now I look at my answer choices and I'm like, crap, my answer choices are not in terms of pi. So what that means is now I need to either approximate, because these are all rounded numbers, or I can use my handy dandy calculator. And in this case, I'll just go ahead and type this in. So 8 times pi divided by 0.5. And I get 50.26, which you can see is going to be approximated down to answer C.